time. Now let me show you another one, 1 Samuel, because I don't want to go too deep on any of these or we'll never finish them. Look at 1 Samuel with me, chapter 1, verse 10. This one, I think, is one of the most fascinating because it strikes our heart chords. This is the story of Hannah. And I want you to think about the inability to have children. And God says that qualifies as an affliction that He feels. As we saw this morning, the compassion of our Lord Jesus Christ. By the way, if you want to know how God feels, Jesus is the exact representation of God. It says in Hebrews 1 and verse 3. Jesus is the exact representation to us of what God the Father's character is like. Jesus shows us. And so don't think that God the Father is kind of harsh and Jesus is all soft. Jesus reflects the compassion of God. And so that compassion we see here in the Old Testament. Look at verse 10. Hannah, chapter 1, verse 10 of 1 Samuel. Hannah was in bitterness of soul and prayed to the Lord and wept in, and right there is the word we're looking at, affliction, anguish. Now, if you back up, look at what she was going through in verse 5, just for you to kind of track what God is understanding. But to Hannah, this is Elkanah, her husband, he would give a double portion, for he loved Hannah. But look at this, although the Lord had closed her womb. Now, there's a big truth here, something to think about. This is on the side. God grants conception. You realize that? You can go to 450 million fertility doctors. God grants conception. Don't ever forget that. God is sovereign over every child that is born. Think about that. He does not capriciously allow immortal souls to come in. In fact, I always remember when I got to college, I met a young man. We were sitting next in Bible college, and I said, "Hi, I'm from East Lansing, Michigan. Where are you from?" He said, "I'm from Florida." I says, "Tell me about yourself." He said, "Well, I was in an accident after a football game." I said, "What?" He says, "I was an illegitimate child. I was in an accident after a football game." And I thought, where did you learn that? Did your parents tell you that? You were an accident? An accidental conception, which means unplanned, unwanted, unsought, unloved, something. Don't ever forget the fact, it says right here, that God is the one who opens and closes the womb. The Bible specifically says God grants conception. And when He doesn't, there's purpose. And that is a very big topic that we're not going to go into. We're going to go into verse 6. Her rival also would provoke her severely. That's the other wife. How would you like to be called? Penaniah or Penanina or whatever her name is, but just is not a nice, she was a rival. But she provoked Hannah severely to make her miserable because the Lord had closed her womb. And so it was year after year when she went up to the house of the Lord that she provoked her. Therefore she, Hannah, wept and did not eat. And Elkanah, her husband, says, "Hannah, why do you weep? Why do you not eat? And why is your heart grieved? Am I not better to you than 10 sons? So Hannah arose after they had finished eating and drinking in Shiloh. Now Eli the priest was sitting by the seat by the doorpost. And there's our verse. She was in bitterness of soul and prayed to the Lord and wept in anguish." If you know anything about Hannah, her prayer that is beautifully in chapter 2 is one of the most powerful theological truths that Mary, the mother of our Lord, memorized and recites in her prayer. Mary parallels in her great prayer of thanks to God Hannah's prayer. What a giant Hannah was. Well, there are some truths here. This anguish in verse 10, if you look back down it, she wept in anguish, is the affliction that is squishing and squashing. It's the depth of emotion that Hannah displayed as she wept. Her inability to have children caused her great suffering, but the cruelty of her fellow wife and the insensitivity that she displayed to Hannah compounded the problem. And and people sometimes don't even know that they're adding. This woman knew she was doing it on purpose, but sometimes we even unintentionally, heap extra pain on those who are struggling in this area. And it's not intentional. They just don't even want to see children. They don't want to see strollers. It's so hard for them. But think about this, the bigger picture. Are there things that you are unable to do and have no control over? Think about that. See, the bigger picture is not conceiving children, not conceiving children. It's not being married, having children, anything. God always is thinking much bigger. This is all about things that are out of our control. Like what we look like what family we were born into, like what opportunities we had that others that we didn't have and others had, or vice versa. It's things that are out of our control. I always tell our children growing up, I said, did you know God picked what family you're in? We didn't. Now, if we'd adopted our children, we could have picked them. We didn't pick you guys, right? Don't you know that if they're born, God picked them. God placed them in. God put you in your family. That's something you didn't have control about. And if there are things we're unable to do and have no control over, perhaps we have limitations or inabilities for which people afflict us and give us pain. And God says, I know all about your struggles. I'm not blind to them. I want to go through your furnace affliction. I want to teach you something valuable you can never learn any other way. So, if there's something, be it as classic as inability to have children, or something that others don't even know about, something that you have no control over, and it just torments you because it's something that you can't do anything about. God says, I understand that affliction. And there's a lesson in that affliction that you'll never learn any other way than letting me walk you through it. And in just a moment, we'll see those in the 119th Psalm.